I actually put a lot of thought into this because like you, I kind of looked at it and was like, man, that's going to be like a real nipple clamp of a matchup. Welcome to Sincast, presented by Cinemasins.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Sincast. This is Chris Atkinson from Cinemasins, joined as always by the voice of Cinemasins, Jeremy Scott.
Hello.
And from Music Video Sins, Barrett Share.
Hey.
Ooh.
And today we're going to be continuing our bracket for the best of the decade, the 2010s. We're going to the East region, several more difficult matchups today. Although on this one, I didn't watch as many movies. I kind of felt like I knew where I was going with some of these.
Yeah,
so
interesting.
There's
a couple of matchups that I think are incredibly difficult.
Right. There was only one movie that I rewatched, and it was because I had not seen it in an embarrassingly long time, and that was The Raid 2.
Oh, wow.
So yes, even these movies that are fantastic, sometimes years go by for me before I've seen them a second time. So, or a third time. This would have been a third time, but yeah, we'll get right into it. We again will be doing our remote stuff during this coronavirus stuff, and this is going to be the normal for a while. So if there's anything, I don't think anybody said anything for this last one that we did. That
matter of fact, we got a lot of good comments. A lot of stay safe and all that stuff, and of course, all you listeners, please stay safe and shelter at home if you can. Yeah, I think everybody's okay with it, and we'll keep on plugging like this, and then eventually we'll get back in the studio and rub each other with our hands.
Oh man, it's gonna be
our toes.
Yeah, it's gonna be lit.
Very moist. Chris is going to turn up the humidity in the studio.
Not the only thing I'll be turning up.
We're gonna have instead of mud wrestling, it'll be like aloe disinfectant wrestling in the studio.
Sexy.
It's gonna be
contestants must shower twice before entering the aloe. All right, so let's get into the East region. Let's start off with number 1 seed Inception versus the number 8 seed Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Yes, thought-provoking.
I did rewatch Into the Spider-Verse recently because it's on Netflix and it's easily obtainable. And I think if we can start with that one, I think the best parts of that movie are absolutely the coming of age stuff and not the Kingpin stuff and even the Doc Ock stuff and even the interdimensional stuff. It's totally Miles Morales, figuring out his powers. I think the time where he's figuring out his powers, where there's those little dialogue bubbles and stuff like that, I think that's every bit as good as the Tobey Maguire one or any of the ones that have come since. Of course, we didn't see the origin story for the Tom Holland one. But it's absolutely delightful. The stuff with him and Gwen when they first met, and he does the shoulder touch. He's like, "Hey," that's just it's gold to me. Now the rest of it is awesome. It's really really good. But that stuff is like the heart of the movie, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I would be just as happy to watch this Miles Morales in many more adventures, animated, live action, what have you. It's there's an element of that thrill of discovery, right? When he's learning his powers, and then that whole "what's up, danger" scene when he embraces that leap of faith and everything, and that is very reminiscent for me to the Tobey Maguire, that first Sam Raimi one where he's learning and figuring out his powers, and he's like, "Go Webb," and he's doing all those hand motions. And there's something missing there when you do like the Tom Holland ones have, and you skip over that. Of course, we've seen Spider-Man's origin so many times.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't need to see it. And in fact, even Spider-Verse isn't showing us Peter Parker's origin again. It's showing us Miles Morales. But you're right. I mean, I think for all the dynamic ideas, interdimension stuff, and the cool visuals, what gets me is the family stuff. Him and his dad, him and his uncle, finding out who his uncle really is. All that stuff is, I think, what makes the movie impactful.
That "I love you" scene is so classic, where he's in the cop car.
Yeah,
and he's just staring him down. He's like, "I'm not going to leave until you say it back." And he's like, "I love you," and he's like, "Copy that." It's so good.
This is one that I probably should have rewatched before this and everything. But I remember it being awesome. So, it's again, what do we talk about when we talk about Spider-Verse a lot of times is the animation style is so completely different. And the script is so smart, and we love Lord and Miller, and, it's,
I tell you what's weird about that animation. Rewatching this, and again, of course, knowing that the blurriness was going to be an issue, I really paid attention to it this time. And I don't know why it's there. It's not a forced perspective thing. It doesn't serve any purpose to me. Like, I literally just paused it, and I was like, what is this supposed to be doing right now? And it's literally just blurriness. And it doesn't like draw your attention to, the other side of the screen. It actually draws you to the blurriness. And I don't understand why they did that when the rest of the animation is so spectacular. It's a choice, I guess, but I really didn't like that choice.
Well, and everything is very intentional about this movie and its animation style, right? Because when Miles is still learning, we've talked about this before, but they animated him at half the frame rate that they animated the experienced Spider-Man. So the Peter Parker, the Jake Johnson guy, is fluid and very sure of himself, whereas, subconsciously Miles looks less sure of himself, less fully a superhero. So the blurriness has to have been an intentional choice.
Yeah.
And, I've heard some people say they're trying to, I guess, mimic pages of a comic book panel, like some of the, I don't see that.
I don't either.
So yeah, maybe we're just old. I don't know. I mean,
I don't like blurriness.
I don't like the blurriness. Music is just too damn loud.
It is going up against Inception, and I feel like we've talked about Inception so many times because of it being in various brackets and everything. I worry that we may not have much more to talk about with Inception, other than how fantastic it is and continues to be. 10 years old now. Man, is this where I'm trying to think if this is where Nolan became Nolan? Like he did The Prestige, but it wasn't a big hit. The Dark Knight was obviously a huge hit, but it was still, I don't know how much, well, I mean, it obviously owes a lot to Nolan, but Nolan, his own singular vision, big, huge hit, Inception, Memento, of course, obviously in there too, but like this one feels like the thing that Nolan had always wanted to make, or was something
I agree.
This was something that was on his mind for a really long time, and he finally got to make it. And now we've seen movies that kind of fit into this kind of genre mold every time he makes movies now. But yeah, what can we say about Inception that hasn't been said?
After all we've talked about between these two movies, is it insane that I'm inclined to rank Interstellar above Inception now? The more that I've thought about it,
I don't think it's a bad take, actually, because Interstellar does get better as you watch it.
Inception stays the same every time I watch it. It's excellent. But it doesn't get better for me after a certain point. You know what I mean? Like it seems like there's just more, I don't know if it's the love angle or the heart or the family or whatever it is with Interstellar, but it just seems like there's more substance than there is just cerebral stuff in Inception.
I mean, I guess what you could say is that I guess the plot of Inception is, why should we care so much about Cillian Murphy and what he does with his dad's company afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, it's that we don't really have any relationship with Cillian Murphy and his dad. You know, so like, so the stakes that are involved are not high, really. For just who cares about some random asshole company?
It's just an excuse to show really cool shit, right? And like really cool ideas and really cool visuals. I'm not trying to poke holes in it. I'm just saying that the more that we've discussed these Nolan movies and stuff like that, like the Inception seems to take more of a backseat to Interstellar. I don't know. It's apples and oranges, kind of, but you see where I'm going with it, though.
Yeah.
I don't think I can think of anything new to say about this movie. Like I failed Chris's challenge. I can't come up with anything new to say about Inception except that I love it and I want to marry it.
Yeah. And when we get to this point about discussing a movie that has been so thoroughly discussed, it is easy to be like, we're kind of down on it now because there's not anything left to mine out of it, we don't think, or whatever. So, but it's a number one seed for a reason. And it goes up against Spider-Verse. Where are we voting?
Inception.
Yeah, I'll be going with Inception as well. It's just and you know what? I think the next time this movie comes up, I'm gonna watch it again and see if I can mine something new out of it that hasn't been said. It's just I don't think it's going to happen, but because it's been endlessly philosophized about and endlessly deconstructed, and it's one of those movies that it feels like it's stale to even talk about it, and that's unfair to the movie. But we've unanimously sent it on. So,
hey, what do you think happens with Tenet? Has it been officially moved to next year?
Everything's going to be moved that hasn't officially been moved. I just read a headline this morning about 3 or 4 other movies that have pushed to 2021 now. Tenet wasn't one of them, though. But I mean,
there's no way it's going to be released on demand, right? A movie like that is not.
Yeah, and somebody's going to release a movie in theaters in July or August and make a mint, but it'll be a risk. So,
do you think for real someone is going to come out with a movie in July or August, even with the heightened awareness of what's going on out there, and they're going to make a mint on?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is somebody's going to time it right and decide to put out a movie before we know we're through it.
Okay.
And then it will come out after we're through it and we lift the quarantine, and that movie's going to make a mint once everybody starts going to the theater again. I'm guessing that might be August. I'm totally guessing. I'm just saying most of the theaters are pushing a full year away just to be safe. Somebody's going to push it 5 months and hope that they can strike it rich.
Right.
And whatever's out in theaters the first weekend that the authorities say, get on out there, that movie's going to make a lot of money.
Yeah. It'll be interesting because if everything lifts at a certain point, you're going to have movies that normally would have been in the summer are going to come out in like January or something, and everybody's just going to come out in droves for it.
And like all the sports leagues are going to start right back up at the same time and compete.
Oh,
with each
God.
other.
Yeah. It's going to be like Cabin in the Woods, like when the elevators open.
Absolutely insane. Inception moves on. It will go up against the winner of the 5-seed Spotlight versus the 4-seed Whiplash.
Ooh.
And this one I marked as the toughest matchup in
I agree.
of the day. I've watched both of these movies recently enough that I didn't have to do one of those things where I, came back and watched them again to have them war with themselves in my head. But Spotlight again. When I watched it this most recent time. I think it was even better the second time than when I watched it in theaters back in the day. It was so much better. I just picked up on so many more things the second time around and everything. And it's just the performances are so good and the writing is so good in this. The movie's very assured.
Yeah.
So I like we said the last time, it's kind of hard to remember that this won Best Picture because it just doesn't feel like it's one of those movies, but it did, and it.
Now it's Tom McCarthy, right?
Yeah,
yeah. So he was on The Wire,
and
he was at one point a journalist, right?
I believe he was.
And I think that's part of what makes this movie work so well is that even if he wasn't a journalist, at least he played that one on the whole season of The Wire and has an understanding of how news works. Because all that hierarchical stuff in the news meetings, when sometimes Keaton's the biggest boss in the room, sometimes Shriver is, and sometimes it's Mad Men, Slattery. And it all rings very true. And I think there's an authenticity there that is missing sometimes in other movies.
Yeah, if he didn't himself, the writers of The Wire, a lot of the writers of The Wire were Baltimore Sun guys, I believe.
Yeah.
At one point, I can't remember who had what involvement, and in that series, I think maybe Richard Price did. I'm not sure, but yeah. Oh, by the way, and do yourselves a fucking favor and watch that season watch any season of The Wire, but watch that one where they do the media and McNulty is a fucking serial killer.
Yes, he is. That's season 5, by the way.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what kills me about Spotlight is that, you think you've seen all the different speeds that Michael Keaton has. Like he's got the Beetlejuice, like manic comic side. He's got the Batman kind of serious-ish. He's got the My Life side.
Yeah, he does.
But this is a completely different speed for him, I think, because he's even talking in a different register. I guess he's like maybe imitating the actual guy, but he's got like a lower tone, almost like what Cranston does for Walter White. Like he drops it down a little bit, and it makes him a little bit more menacing than he normally would be, or authoritative, I guess. And that scene where he's going back to his alma mater for the sit down to talk about the priest and stuff like that, and then all these people show up that he wasn't expecting. He drops it down. He's like he's interrogating them basically, and he's got this sort of force to him where it's like, man, these guys are going to be in some trouble. He's on to him now.
Yeah,
I'm reading here about McCarthy. It doesn't look like he ever has any kind of news background, but he was raised Catholic, which is super interesting when you think about Spotlight, because that's the other thing about this movie that I wanted to talk about is I was not raised Catholic. I was raised Protestant. And so some of the Catholic stuff in this movie like makes a little bit of sense to me, but some of it is foreign to me, like how tight that community is and how loyal they are to the Catholic Church itself, and that's a big important part of this story.
Well, yeah, the biggest revelation of this story for me watching it, just how circular this whole problem was, where you would have this, the priest would molest kids, the kids wouldn't want to say anything about it. Then when the evidence popped up, the Catholics would want to protect the church. So there was never anybody who wanted to actually pursue this stuff, or else they'd get fought tooth and nail. And that's why it was so hard to get any kind of evidence out of the whole thing.
She even says, Rachel McAdams even says after that second meeting with Billy Crudup, where she's like, there's no paper trail. Like none of these were ever settled through the court system. It was always a private settlement.
Even when they were, the documents aren't there, right?
Yeah, even when they were,
thing. All of a sudden, once he filed the motion against my motion, now it's public. And so Ruffalo's like, okay, I can go find those. He's like, no, you can't. This is Boston, man.
That's another thing, too, is actors that I really like, and this is no knock against them at all, but Mark Ruffalo and Rachel McAdams are always perfectly good and really good in what they do and everything, but they are at another level in this one. And there are a lot of times it's subtle things too. But they're at another level in this, and I like them a lot in everything that they do. But this movie in particular, they really brought it, I felt like.
Ruffalo's performance is like almost like in a very different way, like Jake Gyllenhaal in Nightcrawler. Like he's always like, I don't know, he's lithe. You know what I mean? Like he embodies like a different body type than he normally does in movies. It's hard to explain, but it's a whole physical characterization that's different from his normal.
And he
normal
represents the outrage for us, right? Because he has that breakdown at the end where he's like, "Let's publish the fucking story now. We need to get these pricks." And his bosses are saying, "We need to wait for this element, and we need to do it right." And he represents us going, this is maddening. Why can't we take them down?
And again, the unsung hero-ness of Liev Schreiber's character in this thing. Like, this is another mark. I mean, I'm finding myself appreciating this more and more these days. These actors who come in and do basically what is the thankless role in this. And he doesn't get any of that glory. It doesn't feel like, but he's the one who puts everything into motion. And he comes in, he's very dull. He has no real character at all other than I like doing news and being in charge of the news, and very soft-spoken, but just kind of like, well, hey, you think this might be something that's good for, for this department? And he's, and then it's because of what his vision is that this whole thing gets uncovered in the first place. Yeah. And I'm really appreciating roles like this. And I've equated him to Peter Sarsgaard in Shattered Glass, the same sort of deal there. It goes up against Whiplash. Whiplash is this is another movie at this point. I'm wondering what we can say about it other than I know that the last time we talked about Whiplash, people were talking about, they actually had a person say, why don't you bring up the thing about the relationship between Miles Teller and Paul Reiser, his relationship with him. And I think it does inform a lot of what drives him in this. I think it does. He does see that his father was a failed whatever he wanted to be, and is a teacher now. But even more so, and we'll get into the actual relationship in a minute. But even more so, just look at the family dynamic too. One of my favorite scenes in Whiplash is when they're at the dinner table, and they're about to ask. They ask Miles Teller what's going on, and he goes, "Well, I'm first chair at this blah blah blah," and at that point everybody's about to be like, "Oh, great job, awesome, whatever," but then his football player brother shows up and sits down at the table, and everybody wants to talk about his football career all of a sudden. And so before he's even allowed that moment of some sort of recognition in his family, everybody wants to talk about the brother. And so like and so finally when it gets around to him again and he says, "Well, I'm first chair at blah, blah, blah," nobody's interested anymore. And it's another part of what drives him during this whole thing that is it's not something that's showy in the movie, but it really does sort of underline where his character's going.
Well, and I can relate. I'm not a fantastic drummer. I'm not fantastic at anything, but I can relate to that. In that, and it's not my brother's fault, but he was a very overachiever kind of guy. He got straight A's. So if I got straight A's, it was, well, so what? That's the norm. And it was, so I can relate to that a little bit of, not necessarily getting the credit you feel like you deserve because somebody else is already getting more.
That's why older brothers is a sin, right?
Yes, it is.
yes, it is.
I'm glad you pointed out that scene. It's got a weird stinger to it that I've never really understood, and maybe you do, Chris. At the end, it's where Miles Teller is telling his brother like it's Division III, it doesn't really matter, that kind of thing. And I forget what the brother says to him, but he's like, "Come play on our team." And Miles Teller says, "What you will never hear, or 4 words you'll never hear from the NFL." and then sick burn and all that stuff. But then Paul Reiser, his dad, says, or Lincoln Center, like he kind of like digs his son.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is he trying to just take his legs out from under him, or is that like a deeper like come to your senses, boy, like shaking him by the shoulders type?
Yeah,
of thing,
I read that more as just a dad keeping the peace. Like,
oh yeah,
more like don't point out the splitter in his eye if you have a plank in your own eye, kind of thing. But there might be a deeper meaning there. I don't know.
Yeah, it does seem out of character for him to say that, but I think that is a way of him leveling the playing field, so to speak, where you guys are no different from one another. I love you both equally. And
well, yeah, and Miles Teller, I forget his character's name, but he's being such a dick, man.
Yeah,
like he goes from. It's funny because any of his personal life, even his, sometimes he has family movie night with dad and that kind of thing, but obviously with his girlfriend and with this family dinner, he's such a dick. But then he's so submissive. During the J.K. Simmons stuff, but he's a dick to everybody else in the orchestra. So I don't know, man. Like the more I watch this, the more I love it. But he's hard to root for, man, because he's just such a prick.
Yeah, he is. Even
one thing that I did watch, by the way, the one scene in the rehearsal, I caught the beginning of this movie when J.K. Simmons is auditioning everybody, and he starts with like the woodwinds or whatever, and he gets to saxophone and he's like, play these bars, and that guy is like, no, and he says, do the same thing. He's like, no, and then he gets to this girl, he's like, you're in the first chair, let's see if you're in there just because you're cute, and he's like, go ahead, and she plays and he's like, yep, it's because you're cute.
Yeah.
I love this movie.
Yeah, I love both of these movies, and it is the toughest one of this whole thing. I'm going to go ahead and tear off the Band-Aid, guys. I'm going to go with Spotlight on this one.
Wow. Hey, you want to know what my pick is, Jeremy? So you can have the maybe deciding vote?
My mind is made up, but it won't change my mind. But go ahead.
As much as I love Whiplash, and I've always talked about how it's one of my favorite movies of all time, in this matchup, I got to go Spotlight.
Wow.
Because Spotlight is also one of the best movies.
You just robbed me of the chance of knocking out one of your favorite movies.
I actually put a lot of thought into this because I kind of looked at it and was like, man, that's going to be like a real nipple clamp of a matchup. And I really thought about it. And like Spotlight is qualitatively, I think, just a better movie, top to bottom, so well directed, so well written, so well acted.
And it's more important.
And it's definitely more important.
Not that should always be a criteria, but that was the selling point for me. In fact, this was not a close matchup for me because of that factor. Every time I get done watching Spotlight, I feel like I need to go do something to make the world better. When I get done with Whiplash, I'm just like, why did I ever take piano lessons?
Okay, well, Spotlight is a surprise unanimous winner going through.
There we go.
Surprise myself.
It's going to go up against Inception, and that's going to be a dogfight.
Wow, that's going to be a nipple clamp.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be the biggest nipple clamp there is.
It's going to be a cock ring.
Hey, so speaking of which, what's a cock ring for?
Dude, do we really have to go here?
Does anyone know off the top of their head?
I don't.
I think it extends the length of your pre-orgasmic pleasure. I think it tightens things up down there in a way that lets you go for longer before you are done.
All right.
I never thought of it as anything other than more ornamental type of stuff to put on your.
No, I think it goes on. I think it goes on under the balls and the shaft.
Oh,
and so it tightens the balls.
Oh, I see.
And it's like a tantric enhancement.
I've never read into the cock ring enough then, because that's I feel like a cock ring virgin here, because I haven't ever heard of that shit.
Well, I could be wrong.
Maybe.
I kind of hope I am now.
All right, so all of our Sincast listeners, you got a cock ring? Give me comments.
Here comes Frank.
Yep. Or maybe he doesn't come. You don't know.
Oh God. That's all Barrett's fault.
It is.
That's all Barrett's fault. He asked.
Moving on to our next matchup, we have the 11 seed, the Intouchables, versus the 3 seed, the Raid 2.
These movies are so similar. I make that joke all the time.
Yes. This was the one movie that I rewatched, and it wasn't because I was like, I'm really like having to weigh a big decision here or anything. It was just that I had not seen it in forever, so I wanted to sort of freshen my memory up on this movie. And one thing that I had always forgotten about the Raid 2 is like the plot of this movie. Like, there are so many names and so many, there's so many things going on that it does seem sort of incidental to what they're trying to stage in this thing. When we first run into Iko Uwais, he's I don't even know if I understood. I guess the sort of the cop handler guy rescues him from some situation where it's the first movie, right? Is it the first movie? Right after the first movie. Okay, so I haven't seen the first movie in forever, so I didn't even realize that was what that was for. It's like right after that enormous crazy fight. Yeah, and so that happens, and then he's like, okay, well, I want you to go in and get in good with this guy. He's in jail right now. It's perfect timing and everything, and so they start throwing around some names, and I was just like, okay, wait a minute, who's Yuko? Who's Reza? Who's Rama? Yeah, who's Rama? Yeah, and they're all these Rama, they're all these real short names. So I was like, wait a minute, is he Yuko? Wait a minute, he's an undercover cop, so maybe he's Yuko. I don't know. He's Iko. Is Iko Yuko? Yeah, exactly.
Or which one's the mole? That's the trouble I have.
Oh yeah, exactly. The mole for sure. It's the guy that's on the beach. Anyway, it was really interesting getting back into this and looking at the plot of it. It's your typical sort of, other than your the fight scenes, which are so completely different things. It is your typical Donnie Brasco, The Departed type of movie. And God, it's 2.5 hours. I'd forgotten that too. Yeah. But
it's a beast.
But
it doesn't. Did it feel long to you, though?
No, I actually I watched it for about an hour last night before going to bed, and then I finished it this morning. And the hour and a half was like nothing. Especially that back half. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the part that just moves on so fast. Once it gets to about the hour and 45 mark, it gets to that 2:30 like no time. Yeah. But yeah, I was surprised at the plot is very interesting. It's got a lot of like different things going on in that. Rama is playing like a double undercover guy essentially because he's not only undercover to find. They keep saying he's there. They keep telling him that he's looking for corrupt cops, but it doesn't seem like there's really any direction at all as far as what he's really supposed to do in all of this. I mean, that guy, the handler, keeps saying, we're looking for corrupt cops, but it's like, I don't think he even really cares what that guy comes up with. It's like, we're just playing a game here. We're just pawns, so, but he's not only looking for, that and looking for crimes, I guess, with these things, but he's also by the crime boss himself, look after my son. I want you to tell. He's already suspicious of his son way early on. I think he anticipates this move that he's making, going to another rival family and trying to be hot shit in that other family and everything. And it just so happens to be the family that killed Rama's brother at the beginning of this. So
what is the long-haired guy, the guy that was in Force Awakens?
Yeah.
What is his relationship with Rama? He's not the handler, is he?
No. That guy is just a henchman for the one crime family.
Yeah.
And he's
the father's crime family, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. He's just a guy who goes out and beats a whole bunch of ass and kills people.
He sure does.
Yeah. Yeah. And apparently he's been doing it for at least 15 years because he has a scene with his wife where his wife is, he gives money to his wife, and his wife is like, he's like, "Can I see my son?" And she's like, "Well, that's not up to you because you went off and did this, started being a crime guy, and we can't let you see your son anymore. And you don't even look recognizable to me anymore." And of course that's a sad scene because right after that, that's when, the son, pulls all these strings to, have him killed and have.
Oh, is that the nightclub fight?
Yeah, the nightclub fight where he just
fucking
oh
rules.
my god, he throws all that shit at the people and then there's I love the part where they pin him up against the bar and he's just throwing whatever he can behind him. It's so fun, man. So fun. But then, of course, by the end of it, he meets the end boss. He's basically, it's like a video game. He gets out in the alley and there's the end boss at the end. He's like, "All right, well, I'm going to pull out my claws and you're done now."
Oh, that's the assassin, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the kitchen fight guy.
Yeah, he's the guy who works for the rival gang.
Yeah.
You're not kidding, man. There's a lot to keep up with. Like if you want to watch this anywhere beyond just the fights, like there's a lot to keep up with, a lot of names, a lot of different dynamics and stuff.
When
like
I'm sorry, when they bring up that one dude's name, his name is like Barzan or something. It's one of the it's a head of another crime family. It's the head of the family that the two sons are negotiating with. But I don't remember.
Bangan?
Might be Bangan. I don't know. Anyway, they bring him up, and I swear it's the first time I've ever seen that name, like halfway through the movie. And it's right after Rama, calls his handler, and the handler's like, "Well, your job was never to get that guy." And I think that might be the head of I can't remember anymore. There's so many fucking names.
There are.
And so like, I was like, what? And they introduce characters that are awesome. And you're like, wait a minute. Who are these people in the plot? When they introduce Hammer Girl and Baseball Bat Guy, you're like, which is a great scene in and of itself. Hammer Girl on the subway is fucking great.
Yes, it is.
It's like, whoa, there's more characters that I'm going to have to keep up with. And it's not anything that's against the movie, really. I really think that it's fun that they do this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you're trying to keep up with the plot, it's like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
I think it was sort of a reaction to, like, if there's any negative criticism of the first Raid movie, it's that there wasn't much plot.
Yeah.
And it was simply, beating ass for, 2 hours. And so I think this was sort of a way of, is it Gareth Evans?
Yeah.
Gareth Evans. But I think that was his response was saying, okay, well, we can give you the same level of fight choreography and badassness and a huge crime family gangster story underneath all of it. That's probably why he's never made a third, because where do you go from there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and they set up a thing at the end where you feel like it's possible that they could do a Raid 3, because this is one of the funniest things ever, is after he's beaten all that ass in that one place, and he's done, and he's just exhausted. He starts walking out, and that Japanese gang has shown up. because they realize what is going on, and they want to get revenge for it and everything. And they get up, and then it's like a completely silent thing while the music's playing and everything. You get the sense that they ask, "Do you want to come with us? Do you want to work with us?" And he says, "No, I'm done." But they still leave it like, if you wanted to make a Raid 3, you could get it to where, like, you know, I don't know who could talk to this guy anymore and say, you need to keep beating ass and still be undercover. It's definitely not going to be the handler guy. He already said, fuck the handler. But yeah, I don't know who would possibly convince him, but, I do think it's really funny, though. At the end, that whole gang shows up. At first, you're like, "Oh no, he's wasted. He's like he's expended his entire energy on this crew. Now he's got to go through this other one, and then, it's just these Japanese guys who are coming to do the thing that he did by himself."
Yeah. If anything, if there's any knock that I have against this movie, is that I wish we had gone from the kitchen fight to that scene, because that ending. With the kid and the other guy and all that stuff is very anticlimactic after you get the kitchen fight.
Yeah, the kitchen fight is the climax for sure.
Yeah.
Dude, that kitchen fight. We've talked about it a million times on this, but getting a chance to watch it again. I realized, like, what is so awesome about it is, for me, they're going through what is probably a stalemate in fighting each other, fist fights and everything, and then the claws come out, and so at some point he gets one of the claws, and they both have a claw, and they're sitting there, they're looking for openings, and somewhere very matter of factly you see the one guy, he gets him a couple of times. And then he comes back, and you're like, "Oh no, he slashed him a couple of times. He's down. Then he comes back. Iko Uwais comes up and gets another couple of slashes in. But they don't make a big deal of it. Like a terrible movie, a terrible action movie would show close-ups of, and he got him. But in this one, you have to actually sit there and go, "Oh, I think he got him. Yeah. And then as it gets more vicious, it's like, "Oh, fuck yeah. Oh, shit. Holy fuck. Oh.
It's like what I love. I said this last time we talked about this movie, but what I love about that fight is it really feels like either one of them could win. We know Rama is probably going to win because he's the hero, and that's how these things go. But in terms of how that fight plays out, either one of them could have walked out of that kitchen at the end. Mm-hmm. And it just so happens that, and that's why you say when the Japanese gang shows up, Rama's like, all his energy's gone. Like he left everything on the field to beat that guy. That's how equal they were.
Yeah.
Well, that's hilarious that he had that. That fight would have been amazing just on its own. Like, they would be evenly matched and he would be tired afterwards. But this is after he's gone through all the shit that he's got to get to that kitchen, like including Hammer Girl and Bad Boy.
Yeah. It goes up against the Intouchables, and I still haven't seen this for a while now. It has been recently that I saw it. It was my first time seeing it and everything. But now I've had some distance from it. Is there much we can say about the Intouchables at this point that we haven't said?
Well, it also ends with a kitchen fight.
It does.
That is evenly matched.
It does.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild.
And a Japanese gang show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, the actor who plays Driss, the assistant character, is so dynamic, man. I don't know what his deal is, like how popular he is in France, or if he's done, a few things in the U.S.
You talking about Omar Sy?
Yes. What has he done? He did something.
Yeah, he's been in a few big movies over here. I'll look him up real quick. But
okay.
But yeah, he's done some stuff. It's just that this is his most recognizable performance.
Yeah, he's incredibly dynamic in this movie. That scene where the Bryan Cranston character, the old guy, the rich guy, is having his birthday party, and he's playing all this classical music, and he's almost pedantically like exposing Driss to this music, and then he's like, you know what? put on Kool and the Gang, and he puts on Kool and the Gang, and he gets all the old rich people to start dancing. Is just it will make your heart just open up. Like it's just the purest joy. There's one part where one of the old rich dudes is actually like really trying to dance, and he falls on his ass. just pulls him back up.
He's in Jurassic World. He's in X-Men: Days of Future Past. But yeah, he's been in some pretty big movies over here. But yeah, I mean this one is his big one. But man, I don't know what I was expecting when I first watched this. I was I really wasn't expecting much, even though I'd been told it was so good and everything. But the relationship between these two is so real and so touching, and it's infectious watching this thing, because they have differences, but it's not that kind of like, I don't know, sloppy racial difference type of thing that I think I don't know how The Upside did, but I don't know how they treated this relationship or anything, but it's more about young and old and different backgrounds than it is like color, really, or anything like that gets into the whole.
Sure. Well, I think there's a little bit of his family's suspicions about the new employee because of race, but also because of background. But the movie definitely transcends a race movie in a lot of different ways. It's really about friendship and how friendships can form in the unlikeliest of places. And, it's the kind of movie that might make you... It's more of a Roma movie than The Raid 2 in terms of it might make you think twice about how you live your life and where you might look for friends or conversations you might engage in with people you might otherwise have thought you had nothing in common with.
I even like it seems almost like a silly movie thing. I even like the selection process that guy goes through with all the people who try out for this job. There are so many people who seem qualified, but you can tell that they got a little bit of underlying, like, I want to get a bunch of money or something motive out of this. And whereas he walks in and it's just like, fuck you. I'm not,
this is my interview. Fuck you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what attracts him to that guy, is that he's not in it for any other reason. And he doesn't really want to do the job. He doesn't want to do the job either. That's the problem. But like he at least is honest about what he wants in that scene. Yep. And I do like the idea that he sees something in him and says, I want this guy to be the guy. So, all right. So what are we going to do with this matchup?
Oh, Jesus.
Only one of these movies has a car seat guy.
That's
that
true.
Passes a camera.
That's true.
Oh boy. Well, I'll go first. I'm going with The Raid 2.
Yeah, I'm totally going with the Raid 2. I love the Raid 2 so much. I want to slap it on my body repeatedly.
You want to put a cock ring on when you watch it to make it last longer?
Yeah.
It could be 3.5 hours and I would still love it.
Yeah. I will also go the Raid 2. I hate voting against the Intouchables twice.
Yeah.
Which I did when it was up against Black Panther as well, but I feel like the Intouchables is one of those movies that maybe I need to have a little bit more experience with over time to really appreciate it, even though I love it now. But the Raid 2, even though I hadn't seen it but like a couple of times, and those were both long time ago, both of those, just every time I watch that, there's a big huge smile on my face watching the Raid 2, and it's more in me than the Intouchables is.
You can't go wrong with either of these movies for sure.
No,
but, one's just a character study that's fantastic. It's one of the best character studies that you'll see, but it's no Raid 2.
Yeah. So the Raid 2 moves on. It will go up against the winner of the 7 seed Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol and the 2 seed The Martian.
Oh,
yeah, right? That's a rough one, man.
Yeah,
that's
this is a tough one.
Oh, right in the nipple clamps.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, I don't know where to begin. Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, what we always go back to is the Burj Khalifa sequence, and it goes and like everything that happens after that, the sandstorm. It's one of these. I can't believe that this is the fourth movie in a franchise. I guess in a way, it did what Fast and Furious did, right? Where it was a sort of a reboot, but it was still part of the series, and they decided to just go this whole sort of new direction with it. And Ghost Protocol is excellent. And I wonder, I haven't seen Ghost Protocol for a while now. Is it possible that we elevate this movie higher because of that Burj Khalifa sequence, and is everything else around it not as good? Or, I mean, is it possibly average up to that point? I haven't seen it.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either, but I haven't seen it in forever either. So like, it's one of these type of movies where I remember that specifically all the time. Anytime Ghost Protocol comes up, that's what enters my head.
I think of the hallway scene.
Yes,
with the camera and the screen, and they have to be quiet, and Simon Pegg is using the clicker. That is so Incredibles to me. That's like a Brad Bird staple scene.
Yeah.
With the humor when he puts his face over it and all of a sudden his giant face is on the fucking hallway screen. So I think the Burj Khalifa is the highlight. And the only thing I sometimes wish is that had somehow been the climax, because the ultimate climax is Tom Cruise fighting that guy in an automated parking garage.
Yeah.
Which is not. It's not boring, but it's nowhere near as thrilling as Tom Cruise on the side of the tallest building.
It's not as inventive as all the other stuff. And you're right about that scene where they're in the Kremlin or whatever. That scene, that is something I've always wondered about. I know that there are people out there who are trying to invent that technology, and not just for stuff like that, and especially not with a screen, the way they use it here. I think it's more about wrapping themselves up in it and becoming like this year's The Invisible Man. It kind of has that same sort of quality. I don't know how many years ago it was, but I've heard of people trying to make this kind of like camera technology where like it covers them up and they're invisible and shit. And that's fucking frightening.
Yes,
because eventually the technology will be there. You have to assume that it is.
Yep.
Well, yeah. Look at Happy's plane in Spider-Man: Homecoming. Right? He's got.
No, but but Chris is right. They're actually like MIT and other. I've seen this shit even 10 years ago. They were working on like Harry Potter invisibility cloaks, where you basically bend the light using cameras and refraction to sort of make an object or a person invisible. But I think pretty much all technological advances are frightening at this point. Like we've gotten all the good use out of most of them. All the ones we have waiting to discover are like deadly and scary and frightening. I'm joking. Also, I wanted to say two things. I sometimes bag on Mission Impossible 3 for not being as good as people claim it is. And I don't think it is. But I do think J.J. Abrams deserves credit for reviving that franchise, because after 2, if 3 hadn't been good or done well, I don't think they would get 4, 5, and 6. The other thing is I just read yesterday that Brian De Palma was asked about the Mission Impossible movies, and when they got done, Tom Cruise told him, I got an idea for another one. And he was like, why would anyone want to make another one? and then he's like, and of course you see now it's money and they make a lot of it. And I was like, well, yeah, okay. But from a story perspective, he said, I never made movies to make money, which I think is a pretty fascinating statement.
Yeah.
Cause he felt like that story is done. Why would we need to go back there? But the money people, they went back there and they've made a couple $1 billion.
Does that, I know this is off topic essentially, but does that first Mission Impossible, do people remember that as the great movie as it should be? Because that movie I feel like that movie's great, and I could be, I don't know, I could be in the minority these days.
No, I think the majority of film fans think that movie is great. I think or film buffs. I think the majority of people that go to the movies today maybe haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's possible.
I don't know.
They know
I mean,
Mission Impossible for the last 3 of them.
I think people have gone back to it. My son actually really wanted to see it because of the latter day ones, because he loved them so much. He wanted to go back to the original. He actually really likes 2, which I don't understand. But, I mean, there's certain things. If you are a John Woo style fan, there are things to like about Mission Impossible 2, including Dougray stuff.
Yes.
But the first one, yeah, I think Jeremy's right. Like, I think film fans maybe even consider that the best of the franchise because of the De Palma connection, because it is the spyiest one of all of these. The rest of them are more action, right?
It's the only one that has any kind of dark undertones to it. Like you watch Ghost Protocol, you're not concerned about those people's lives. Like even the guy from Lost that dies, you're not worried about that guy. It's just light on. This is cotton candy. You watch the first Mission Impossible, and it's a thriller. And I think it's fantastic. So I hope you're not in the minority.
Yeah. The camera work is, I mean, it's quintessential De Palma stuff, but it's one of those movies that every time this is a summer blockbuster. You just don't see movies directed like this that were summer blockbusters, especially not in the 90s.
That's true.
And so like, it's just, it's something that I hope if there are people out there who haven't seen that one. Anyway, we're talking about Ghost Protocol. And Ghost Protocol is awesome.
Yes, it is.
If I could ding this movie for anything, it would be, the fist fight with the middle-aged man at the end. Yeah. But also, there's a big plot point where they rely on Anil Kapoor really being into Paula Patton. Like, of course, yes, she's beautiful and everything, but like he's surrounded by this palace of babes, of like attractive people, and they're like, "You're going to go in there and be the most attractive,"
right?
And like she pulls it off.
See, you know what? That is one thing about almost every spy movie these days that I've been watching. Like in Kingsman, I mean, you could always play that off as a joke or whatever, but like in Kingsman, they learn how to be attractive essentially. So like there's even a competition between, Taron Egerton and the other girl to get this other girl in bed. And it's like, how do you know that girl won't like, she's not going to like either of them? How do you know?
Yeah.
Is it because they have the magical key, or are they like slipping roofies in their drink or something? Because like I don't understand why. Like, and they make it just seem like, well, I'm just so charming. I went to charm school. I'll be able to date this person. I'll be able to get this person in bed in an hour. Well, Matt, I don't get it. Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol goes up against The Martian. This is a tough matchup. So tough.
There's a lot of people in The Martian.
There are a lot of people. There are a lot of people.
God damn it.
I mean, can you like if you asked the normal person, they'd be like, "Is Kristen Wiig in The Martian?" They'd be like, "No, what are you talking about?" But she's the one
fantastic.
That
stands out the most in terms, and she's great in the movie. She's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's the one that I was like, well, that's a curveball.
Yeah.
I've actually watched The Martian twice this week, both times late at night while drinking wine. And I've got the extended edition.
Nice.
And lately, I only watched the extended edition. It's one of my favorite extended editions ever because it adds so very little. There's like, I think 2 new scenes, but most of the rest of the new footage is just 5 more seconds lingering on a shot in this scene, 5 more seconds lingering on a shot of this scene, just a little more details that help for me sell that isolation of Watney on Mars. I love it. I haven't found a flaw. Like I'm not going to say, I wish the ending was not a car garage fight between 2 50-year-old men, because the ending of this movie is rad. And so I may be tipping my hand a little bit. People probably already guessed that I'm probably going to vote The Martian. But it's a great idea, which came from Andy Weir in a great book, but it's so expertly made. I struggle to find flaws in it at all. And like the biggest flaw is that it's largely harmless, right? Whereas Apollo 13 really happened. This is fictional. So I can watch Apollo 13 and be like, wow, the power of humanity. I watch, The Martian, and I'm like, wow, the potential future power of humanity. That's the only knock, and that's a pretty light knock.
As I have said probably hundreds of times on this podcast, the appeal for The Martian to me is just the fact that the guy thinks about the problem, and we hear those thoughts, and yes, it's complex, but like not too complex that you can't understand what he's going for. And of course, Matt Damon is so good at doing the thing that he does. It just involves you in a way, and it's not like the stuff he's thinking of is something that's just out of left field. Like, yes, it's kind of there to advance the plot, a lot of the things he thinks of, but they are based in real things. Like they don't seem like he just dreamed these things up on the fly, which is what a lot of movies would do, where he'd be like, oh, I don't know what to do here. Let's try this. And it works. And in this case, so many problems that he comes up with is that, look, I have to do this. It may not work, but if I don't do this, I'm going to die. And that's the ultimate, that's the ultimate thing that powers every decision that he makes in the movie. And it's the type of stuff that poker players, maybe not dying, but poker players always have to deal with when they're like trying to figure out certain decisions. Does this decision might be wrong, but if I don't do it, I'm going to die. So like I'm going to get knocked out of this tournament or whatever. It's that type of thinking in there, of course, on a much higher level. But that's the reason why I love it so much. The fact that Matt Damon is so great in it just adds to the fun that you have, him considering the problems and everything.
Some people were frustrated that such a pretty boy got that role when the character's probably not written to be so pretty. But in terms of that nasty, biting sarcasm, Damon is absolutely perfect to play that character. And of course, the movie had come out before I read the book. So when I was reading the book, I just pictured Matt Damon anyway. But I think it's probably more like an Edward Snowden-looking type in the book. Whereas, Matt Damon is fucking Matt Damon.
Yeah. Should have been played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Hey, as many times as you've seen this, Jeremy, do you still get like the jollies, the tingly feeling when the Starman sequence starts?
Not the Starman sequence. Well,
the Starman sequence kills me.
That's when they're slingshotting around Earth.
Yeah.
And that's a great sequence. But no, for me, it's that ending. I get goosebumps every time she goes, I got him. And it cuts right to Kate Mara in the ship, and she's like, can't fucking believe the joy she's feeling. We did it! God! I still get goosebumps. And again, I think it's just expertly made. It's expertly edited, and Ridley just knew how to cut from one shot in space to, Times Square, back to NASA, it's all done intentionally to build that feeling. And I've seen it 60 times now, and I still get those goosebumps.
Ridley Scott obviously deserves a lot of credit for how this movie has turned out, but it's so different from so many other Ridley Scott movies that it still feels like you should still give the lion's share of the credit to Andy Weir in this. And I know we've interviewed
or Drew Goddard.
Yeah. And I know we've interviewed Andy Weir and everything, and it seems like there's bias there. But when you actually look at the movies that, like, Ridley Scott obviously has a legendary career here, but look at all the movies this guy makes. It's so different from everything he makes. Like, it's got way more humor than most Ridley Scott movies do. It's just made in a completely different spirit. I would have never guessed Ridley Scott made this movie. Never.
Yeah. Right.
So, but yeah, you're right. Drew Goddard also deserves a lot of credit on this.
I think that's part of it. When he makes Prometheus, or the Prometheus sequel, I forgot the name of.
Covenant. Alien Covenant.
Covenant. he has a lot more control over where those stories are going, and maybe he shouldn't. Whereas with The Martian, there were two great writers who had control over where that story was, and then he was handed a script to film. And, his sci-fi chops, that's the only place in The Martian I can see Ridley's work is the suits and the space shots. But even those are brighter than like his own movies. There's there's a optimism to the coloring of this film, unlike Alien or Prometheus. It is very interesting that this was a Ridley Scott joint.
You know what I keep hearing is Boss, to take a term from the 80s, is Kingdom of Heaven's director's cut. I keep hearing that movie is fucking amazing.
The Orlando Bloom thing?
Director's cut of it.
What is it about?
The Crusades?
It came out in it was like a May summer tentpole movie that came out in like 2000, maybe 99, 2000, 2001. I can't remember what year it came out. And I watched it, and I think I damn near fell asleep in it.
I can't remember. I've seen it. I can't remember.
The trailer is awesome, by the way. If you ever want to see the trailer is badass. But like, ever since that director's cut came out, I've heard people say to me, and I've seen it on lists, something that I'm going to have to end up watching probably at some point.
Oh, I'm sure you own it, right?
I think I do, but I have to check. I have to check on that.
Yeah, I remember really, really, really not liking that.
Yeah, same here.
But if a director's cut can turn it around, I'll give it a look.
All right, so what are we going to pick here between Ghost Protocol and The Martian?
Martian.
Yeah, I mean, The Martian's just a behemoth, man. It's so great. I think collectively it may be the movie that the three of us have seen the most times. Like, not just Jeremy.
I think you're right.
I've personally seen it probably 25 times without exaggerating. And it's so
it is.
It's been 7 days since I ran out of.
I will now crush up a Vicodin and eat it with this potato because I can.
I will also be picking The Martian, which means we unanimously picked all of them. That was sort of. I actually even thought Spotlight might do it, even though that was sort of an upset unanimous win. I kind of had a feeling that even Barrett would be going for Spotlight there. And that's why I didn't watch as many as usual on this one. I felt like I had a good feel for what was going to win. And they all did. They all won. The Martian now goes against The Raid 2, and that'll be a tough one.
Son of
these are all like contenders. Like Spotlight could literally win the entire thing, and I wouldn't be shocked.
Right.
Inception could too. The Martian could, and even The Raid 2.
They all have a really good chance. So we're gonna go on to do what recommends and warns now.
Totes amazeballs.
There, great.
It won the Academy Award.
Oh, for what?
For best movie ever made.
So about 2 years ago, our good friend, fellow sin writer, Aaron Dicer, he recommended two movies to me that he thought I would like because both he knows my personality and he knows I love Eminem and 8 Mile. The first was Blind Spotting, which I watched probably about a year ago and then have talked about nonstop ever since. The other one was a movie called Bodied. And this was produced by Eminem. It's a YouTube original. And I fucking loved it. Basic premise without spoilers. This nerdy white kid is doing a thesis. He's in grad school. He's doing a thesis on the use of the N-word in rap battles and how it differs from regular culture. Because there's a thing about rap battles where you're sort of supposed to be insulting the other person. And so some things are allowed that regular conversation would not allow. So he goes to a rap battle, takes his girlfriend, who couldn't care less, and he's just geeking out about it because he's just a fanboy. And one of his favorite battle rappers, Ben Grimm, ends up winning this battle, and he goes up to him afterwards and ends up striking up a conversation. And they walk out to the parking lot, and some asshole challenges Ben Grimm to a duel, a rap battle. And he's like, I'm going to let one of my boys take you. Here, white boy, come over here. So the white kid who's doing a dissertation is now been entered into a informal parking lot battle rap by Ben Grimm, this big rapper guy. And he smokes the other dude.
The nerdy white guy does?
The nerdy white kid smokes him.
Huh.
And from there, it's about him going on to become a battle rapper and experience what he can and can't get away with. His first official battle is against a Korean guy. And this is the funniest scene in the whole fucking movie. This movie is way funnier than I'm making it sound. It's as much comedy as it is drama. But the Korean guy just attacks our main character, whose name is Adam, for being white. And the guy who's hosting the rap battle is like this extreme version of Dave Chappelle doing Prince or somebody. I don't know. Because like the Korean guy does something about you're so white, yada yada.
There's a more extreme version of that character.
and he makes fun of Adam for being white. And then the rap battle host goes, ha ha, white people. And then there's another line where he makes fun of him for being rich and having a butler or whatever. And the guy goes, ha! Cracking my ass up. So then it's Adam's turn, and he has prepared a few bars like a lot of rap battlers do. And they're not terrible, but he's so proud of them as he delivers. And he's like, such and such and such and such. And looks around and no one is reacting.
Huh.
And so then he decides, he gets these little thought bubbles that show up, go personal or not. And he chooses to go personal and suddenly just starts tearing into this guy with the most racist, like Korean jabs ever. Like the Korean guy had said, you're like Paris Hilton. You probably have a dog in your bag. Adam says, I do have a dog in my bag. I'm bringing you takeout. And he wins and the crowd goes crazy. And the Korean guy comes up to him afterwards and says, that's how you do racial sensitivity in a battle rap. At least you know I was Korean. Most people just call me Chinese. And so
he's actually giving him respect for this?
He gives him respect. They become pals.
Huh.
And it goes on. And at the very end, basically there's a rap battle set up between Adam and Ben Grimm, protege and master. This would be like Eminem battling Dr. Dre before Eminem was famous. And I don't want to say anything more. The movie is maybe 50% rap battles, and they're all every bit as awesome as 8 Mile. Some of the wordplay is incredible. And then, like, there are 2 points where the movie takes a left turn from comedy into sudden drama, where I think I tweeted out, at first I was like, ha, 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 but then I was like, damn. And then I was like, ha, 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 and damn. The movie has a lot to say about what is racist and what isn't racist and what's appropriation and what isn't appropriation. There's even a great bit where 2 rappers that like each other decide to belittle themselves in a battle instead of making fun of the other one. So the Asian guy makes fun of his opponent as though she were Asian, and she makes fun of him as though he were female. It's super clever. Really funny. It's 2 hours long. I will be watching it at least 5 or 10 more times in my life. And it is a hard recommend. It is also a hard R rating. There's a little bit of nudity, but the language is off the charts. It's like a Tarantino film. And I can't believe YouTube produced it. But I loved it. That's my strong.
This was a movie. What is it? I guess it's a couple years ago when we were doing a spring or fall preview with one of the movies that was scheduled to come out, and we looked for trailers for it and couldn't find anything that really. It might have been one of actually. I think the only thing that was up there might have been either a fake trailer or one of those really teaser trailers where it was just doesn't tell you anything about it. And I was surprised to hear that it was so good afterwards too, because when you see something that's supposed to come out, then you don't hear much about it. And then it's like, oh, it was a YouTube movie. I was like, okay, well then it probably sucked then.
So was it released theatrically?
I don't believe so. I believe it was only released through the YouTube Red subscription program. If you had that, you could watch this movie. And now it's on home video. It probably had a limited release somewhere, but it's got a 90 on Rotten Tomatoes. Like, I'm certainly not on an island in telling you that this is a good movie.
Huh.
And so, and I want to say more, but I feel like recently I've been overselling movies I like and then letting you guys down. So I fucking loved it. If you ever watch it, I would love to hear what you think.
Well, you didn't oversell Blind Spotting. Like I said, I actually like that movie more than I expected to. So yeah, I'll totally check this out. So this is on like on demand.
You can pay $3.99 to watch it on YouTube. Sign up for a YouTube subscription, watch it for free, or you can buy it on Amazon, Vudu, Google Play. So yeah, I should have just said yes. It's on demand. But I also have it. I can bring it to you in 2 months whenever we see each other again. I would encourage you to watch it before then.
All right.
I've been watching a bunch of baseball movies, and one of them that I had never seen before was Little Big League.
Oh, let's see, which one is this?
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to
see if you guys can guess it. What happens?
Okay.
It's not Rookie of the Year, so now I'm lost.
Who's the main character in this? The actor.
Okay, so it's Luke Edwards, who you remember from The Wizard. Who's the kid who's the Super Mario savant when Luke Edwards, but there are a lot of people in this.
What year was this?
94.
Oh, okay.
Which it's amazing. I think 3 or 4 baseball movies came out in 1994, and that's the year they had the work stoppage.
Nice.
But Little Big League is Luke Edwards, and his grandfather is Jason Robards, and Jason Robards owns the Minnesota Twins, and Robards' character dies, leaves the team to his grandson, who's who knows a lot about baseball, like knows all sorts of historical things, the rules, everything.
I know. I've seen this movie. I saw this movie in theaters.
Oh, you did?
Yes. That's insane. Okay. Sorry.
So he leaves him the team. The team is coached by Dennis Farina. And Dennis Farina is a hard ass, and obviously he doesn't have he was hired to be a hard ass and to get into the heads of the players and everything, but he does it a little bit too much. And it's not too they're not playing well. They have a team that they think is pretty good, but they're not playing well. Farina, he tells so Luke Edwards inherits this team, and suddenly he's trying to tell Dennis Farina, he's 12 or 13 years old or something like that. He tries to tell Dennis Farina how to do his job, and Farina's not having it, obviously. And Luke Edwards fires him and says, "I'm going to be the manager now."
I'm the captain now.
Yes, exactly. So your typical bullshit baseball premise, right? Rookie of the Year had the sort of the same deal where, Thomas Ian Nicholas suddenly was gifted this arm that could throw 100 miles an hour, and he pitches for the Cubs, and it's one of those type of things where it's a ridiculous premise, whatever. But this movie was way better than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, really? Wow.
I don't know what it is, especially in the knowledge of baseball. It's very good. A lot of baseball movies just do not get that right. And a lot of times the baseball is incidental. Even in a movie like Major League, the baseball is incidental a lot of times to what else is going on screen. I rewatched that as well, and I was just like, how is this team supposed to be good? I don't understand how this game, even in Little Big League, I don't really understand, but there's a little bit more element to it where it feels like, okay, I can kind of see them being good. Timothy Busfield plays first baseman in this.
Yeah, I remember that.
This is actually a really good performance for Timothy Busfield. He's usually sort of a side character or secondary character or whatever. He's got more of a main part in this one. But what I really liked about it was Luke Edwards and his friends, the people who play the friends in this. Some of the most hilarious shit in this movie is from what his friends are saying. And there's a whole conversation where they're out at the mall and they start getting into this conversation where it's like, do you think Batman goes to drive-through and gets Taco Bell and stuff like that? and somebody's like, of course Batman doesn't go to Taco Bell and McDonald's and stuff like, of course he doesn't do that. It's like, well, how do you know? I mean, like, surely he gets a craving every once in a while. And then like they get to it, and one of the kids is like, man, I wouldn't want to be the car that's behind the Batmobile. You see all those flames that come out? And the conversations in that reminded me a lot of Stand By Me. And you know, Stand By Me had that sort of that casual pop culture reference sort of discussion stuff going on. And I was like, all right, who did this? Now, I don't know. The guy who directed Little Big League, this was his only feature.
Wow.
But he produced a lion's share of Rob Reiner movies. Including Stand By Me. But there are no writers that were part of Stand By Me on this. It's just a coincidence in a way, but like I don't know if he found writers who were just generally like the people who did Stand By Me, but that reminded me so much of that. Anyway, a movie that gets baseball right, has some really good discussion in it. That type of thing is a lot funnier than I thought it would be. This was a total surprise, and I'll soft recommend it. I know that baseball isn't a lot of people's bags, but I thought I had a lot of fun with it. I really didn't think I was going to.
It's good that you're watching baseball movies now that there's no actual baseball going on, so you've got to get your fix somehow, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So in this self-isolation period, I've done a lot of Netflix. I've discovered actually Parks and Recreation really for the first time, by the way.
Oh, really?
I had seen episodes before. I really enjoyed them, much like 30 Rock. I've just never like gotten into it. So that's been a nice surprise to me. But what I want to pretty much recommend, a little bit of a wreck-a-warn, is a movie called Frances Ha. Okay? Frances Ha is
Baumbach.
Yes, Noah Baumbach, a 2012 movie, and it's Greta Gerwig, who went on to direct Lady Bird.
I've seen this
titular role. Have you seen this?
I've seen this. Go on.
Yeah. Okay. So this is an extremely Baumbachian story. This, except it's a woman in place of the guy. Typically, this like Greenberg is very much like this. A guy who can't get out of his own way, like an aging hipster, basically, who can't grow up. Arrested Development. So Greta Gerwig is a 27-year-old ballet dancer, but she is not good at ballet. She's good at choreography, but she's not good at ballet. But she still thinks that she can make it. So she's in this New York company, kind of as an apprentice, even though she's too old to be an apprentice. Really hasn't experienced the world, hasn't experienced adulthood. She's got this very codependent relationship with her girlfriend, with her girl who is a friend. They make the joke that they're a lesbian couple that doesn't have sex because the friend, Sophie, she actually has a boyfriend that she's kind of getting into. And Frances is just coming off of a relationship. And so the story is essentially Sophie beginning to grow up a little bit and spread her wings. And then Frances basically has to start making her way in the world in New York in the early parts of the last decade. And so she moves in with Adam Driver, fairly early Adam Driver performance here, and one of his friends. She bounces around basically all over the place. At one point, it's funny. She goes back to her family in Sacramento, which is very reminiscent of Lady Bird, since that's where Greta Gerwig is from. Of course, Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig have had some sort of relationship. I don't know if they were married or just dating for a while.
Well, it looks like they both co-wrote this movie too, so she may have written Sacramento in there because of her own experiences. I
was thinking that, yeah. But the thing about it, and it's really, really good. It's like I say, Baumbach is right up my alley. I had never seen this actually before. I'd seen basically his entire catalog. This is maybe his most famous movie, besides Marriage Story now. But The thing, I went back and watched a little bit of Kicking and Screaming in his 96, 95 movie. And what I noticed is that early Bombeck stuff is very scripted. It's one person talking, one person talking, one person talking. There's no crosstalk. There's no like overlapping dialogue or anything like that. Eventually, I think he gets better at this. Like Myritt Stories and Marriage Story in particular, I think has some of the most natural dialogue I've ever seen. But this can feel a little bit stilted, and it's funny. It's hilarious, but it's a little bit stilted. But there is some really good comedy. There's at the beginning when Greta Gerwig is talking about like the failure of her relationship. She's like, even when we were having sex, he would always want to finish. The only way he could finish was from behind. And she was like, I don't understand that because all the important stuff is facing away from him. And it's dialogue like that that's really, really funny. Adam Driver's character is kind of like the proto-hipster version of what he'll play later on with While We're Young, which I talked about not too long ago. Josh Hamilton from 8th grade, the dad from 8th grade, is in here for a brief moment. There's a hilarious interlude where Frances decides she's going to go to Paris because Josh Hamilton's character has an apartment over there. And she literally goes for, I think, 2 dads. Like she's like, I'm going to get out to Paris over the weekend. And she like, because of the jet lag, she sleeps through most of it. It is very, very funny. The only thing that I think that did bother me was how much of an asshole she is. I mean, this is just it's hard to root for this character until the very end, basically. And even then, it's like, did she earn what she got? And B was that dialogue. Once you see how good he is with stuff like Marriage Story, especially with Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson in those roles, and Myritt Stories and the later stuff, it's more stark how stilted a little bit this dialogue is, but it's still a recommend. You're not going to have a bad time watching this. Did you like it, Jeremy?
It was so long ago. I just know that the black and white, when I looked it up, I was like, oh, black and white. I remember I saw this movie.
Yeah.
But I don't remember anything about it.
Did you see it, Chris?
I have not seen it. It's a movie that has come up several times over the years that I just haven't gotten around to. I remember when it came out, actually.
What's funny about this is that when in Lady Bird, I think Jeremy mentioned she's kind of a dick too, right? Like the main character is, but you still kind of fall in love with her. At least I did.
Yeah.
With Frances Ha, I think the point is that you're not supposed to fall in love with her. Like I think she's. It's like Greenberg. Greenberg is such a loathsome character that it's really, really hard to root for him. With this one, as adorable and as wonderful and as smart and as beautiful as Greta Gerwig is, she makes it hard to love her. But it's still a good watch. It's still a recommend for sure.
Yeah. When we recommended 3 movies, do we want to do some more or do we want to go to questions?
I actually have a few, but I would like to give a straight up warn. And I only have one of those.
Okay.
I watched this last night. It's a movie called Flash of Genius. This is Greg Kinnear.
Yeah.
Playing the guy that invented the intermittent windshield wiper, but then was robbed of his invention by Ford Motor Company and then sued them. Lost his whole family over his obsession and eventually wins. And that it is maybe one of the most boring movies I've seen in my entire life.
It looked horribly boring. Why did you watch this?
Because it was the only thing on with actors I recognized that I hadn't seen. And
it's about windshield wipers.
I'm telling you, in this era in this quarantine era, I've got 7 movies here that are just as obscure that I've watched that I could have recommended just because they were on. Future episodes, I'll talk about Before the Devil Knows You're Dead with Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
I'll talk about a movie called They That Follow with Caitlin Dever from Booksmart. If it's on and it's recent and it has actors I recognize and I've never seen it, now more than ever, I'm watching that shit. So Greg Kinnear, is it Lauren Graham, the girl from Gilmore Girls, the mom?
Yep.
She plays his wife. and Dermot Mulroney plays his friend. And almost you'll recognize a few other names. It's just boredom in a movie. Like somebody said, let's make this into a movie, and nobody said no, and so it happened. But it's not thrilling when he wins. It's not sad when his wife leaves him. It's God. I wonder if the guy himself didn't fund the movie, because otherwise, I don't see why an investor would bank on this. It is every bit as boring as it sounds, and I wish I had watched it, but I'm glad I did so that I can steer you away from it. Greg Kinnear is better in a lot of. Go watch Dear God before you watch this movie.
Oh, that's fucking harsh.
That's harsh because it needs to be.
That's harsh. I'm the counter to you on this movie, by the way.
Oh, you liked it?
I really liked it.
Oh, son of a bitch!
I've seen this movie a couple of times, even.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. I find that whole kind of shit fascinating, man.
Fair enough.
I find stupid shit like that always fascinates me. Like the guy who invented the windshield wiper sounds stupid. I love it. So
there you go, folks.
I enjoyed it highly because I don't know. It just appealed to me on a certain level that I can't express. You're probably completely right about it being boring.
It's a 7 out of 10 on IMDb, 60 on Rotten Tomatoes. I think we're both right in that you either like or hate this movie. There's this moment in the court case where Ford has claimed with an expert witness that the intermittent windshield wiper isn't an invention because he used fuses, circulators, and some other kind of tool. And basically these tools already existed. So what he created out of them can't be considered a new invention. And it wants so bad to be A Few Good Men here.
Yeah.
But of course, part of the problem is the character represents himself in court. And so he walks up and he basically reads the opening to A Tale of Two Cities by Dickens and basically says, did all these words in this book exist before Dickens wrote the book? And the expert is ultimately forced to agree, yes, this is a new work created out of existing tools, but it just doesn't have that pop like in A Few Good Men where Kaffee does the thing about show me where the mess hall is in this rule book.
Mm-hmm.
But it's trying to have the same pop. The one moment that made me laugh is when he has to take the stand. And so he stands outside the stand and asks a question as the lawyer. Then he runs around and gets in the witness chair and answers it. Then he stands up and gets back and runs to the front. But I was mostly bored and, I had some wine. Maybe that was part of it.
I don't know. It's probably exactly as you described it. For me, I don't know. It was just one of those things where that type of thing, I'll be fascinated about it. I mean, this is a terrible comparison, but The Informant is about fucking cornstarch.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, obviously they do things that liven that movie up, that makes it transcendent. And The Informant, of course, is way better than Flash of Genius. But I don't know. It's just, it's stuff like that where people are fighting against a huge corporation with all the money and all the resources, and to crush your dreams, and the little guy finding a way to of course the real guy, I think it took like 10 years of his life.
It did, and it is a true story. And Ford came and offered him millions at his house, and he said, as long as it comes with a written apology that we can publish in the newspaper that they knowingly stole my invention, and they wouldn't agree to it. So he kept fighting in court and eventually won.
Yeah,
probably like the movie says he won $10 million. That's enough to fund a movie about yourself, right?
Yeah, probably so.
Half of it goes to Greg Kinnear.
Yeah. Dear God, my God, that's such a horrible insult.
That was like one of his first leading roles. Man.
Yeah, it was. I think he
was on like The Soup, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was he was on The Soup. Was it Talk Soup first, and then The Soup?
It was
Talk Soup first,
and then he made that movie. Oh my God, that movie's fucking awful.
Okay,
so like I said, I've been watching baseball movies. One that I rewatched, I had not seen since it came out. That is a major classic to people, I believe, who are just slightly younger than me, is The Sandlot.
Mm.
I remember watching The Sandlot and enjoying it, but then later on in life, I realized people were quoting this movie like it was their Pulp Fiction or something. Mm-hmm. And like, I was like, man, I like The Sandlot, but I didn't know it was, I rewatched it and I really, really loved it. It's so good. I knew it was, but I think this second time around and being much older now, I really love this movie now. But yeah, there are some things about it that I'm like, cause I think it loses its main character essentially midway through it.
It does.
It starts off with him narrating the whole thing and saying like, this is the summer when blah, blah, blah. Benjamin Franklin Rodriguez is his name, which is a bunch of bullshit. He's like, when Benjamin Franklin Rodriguez taught me baseball and everything. And so like, it shows this kid who's just moved. His mom is Karen Allen. Karen Allen is just recently remarried to Dennis Leary, and she wants this nerdy kid of hers to go out and like actually make friends and even get in trouble. She says, don't get in too much trouble, but get into some trouble. But he befriends these baseball players for some reason, even though he has no talent for playing baseball whatsoever, but he just wants to be included. There's eight people, eight kids all playing this perpetual baseball game essentially. And he just kind of walks in on the field and joins them, but he doesn't have any ability whatsoever. He can't catch the ball. He can't throw the ball, nothing. But because Benjamin Franklin Rodriguez is such an awesome dude, he takes him under his wing and defends him with all the other kids and everything. And then at some point in this, the kid is accepted. He starts to learn how to catch the ball and throw the ball and everything. And when anytime they hit a ball over the fence, it goes into this junkyard and they're scared of this dog that they call the Beast. And they think, and there's a guy in there who tells this awesome story. And this is probably the most famous part of the whole movie. Tells this awesome story about how this junkyard dog came to be and everything. And like the guy who owned the junkyard bought this dog to fend off intruders or something, but the dog was eating, it was like thieves were coming in and the dog was eating the thieves, and there were 150 something thieves that got killed and eaten. And like the police came by and they said, well, you're gonna have to lock up this dog. And the junkyard guy's like, how long? And he's like, forever. This is before Drunk History, where like you had somebody saying something and then you had another actor sort of mouthing the words and everything. And so it's like forever. But yeah, so they lose a ball. They've lost many balls over this fence over the past couple of years. And main character kid decides to go home and pick up a ball that was signed by Babe Ruth to the Dennis Leary character, and to use that ball because he doesn't know who Babe Ruth is. He's heard of Sultan of SWAT. He's heard of Great Bambino. He doesn't know who Babe Ruth is. So he thinks Babe Ruth is like a woman or something that signed this baseball for his dad. Doesn't know how valuable the ball probably is. And when he gets up to bat, he has his moment in the sun. He hits a home run with the Babe Ruth ball, and it goes over this fence. And so for a good chunk of this movie, it's them trying to figure out how to get the ball back, because they know that Dennis Leary is going to go on a Demolition Man rant if he doesn't get that ball back. And so there's a lot of like inventive stuff on like how they try to get the ball back. A lot of inventive stuff on what these kids' perspectives of this dog actually is.
Yeah.
And so so there's a lot of stuff going on there. I really enjoyed how they did that because it's easy to get like some really vicious, horrible dog and make that the main character, the dog that they're scared of. But here, it's a basic dog, but they are imagining it as much bigger than it really is. And the movie's just fun all the way throughout. It's just been forever since I've seen it, and I was amazed to see how good it was. So The Sandlot.
Yeah, I have always gotten a little bit of Stand By Me vibes from this movie.
Yeah.
Both in terms of maybe the era they're set in, as well as the coming of age and the kids being kids and warped perspective of adult life.
Yeah.
I love it. I've always loved that James Earl Jones is in two of my favorite baseball movies ever, this and Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
And I choose to believe James Earl Jones just loves baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I think that dog is a Mastiff, like an English Mastiff, I think it's a big enough dog, but they're portraying it in their minds like the size of a fucking horse.
Yeah, like
with,
it's Clifford.
Fangs and I haven't seen it in ages, but I've seen it several times and I loved it.
Yeah.
You remember when James Earl Jones dictated the national anthem at a World Series game one time?
I don't
remember that at all.
It sounds awesome.
It was. Okay, so they bring out James Earl Jones and to speak the national anthem instead of sing, obviously, because he's got this grand voice. And then it gets to say does that Star Spangled, so like the big thing, oh say does that Star Spangled Banner yet wave, and he goes, oh say does that?
No.
He totally flubbed the line. I'm like, you came here for one reason, man. You flubbed the line.
Hey, I look at it as I got an extra word out of James Earl Jones.
There you go.
It's
and at least it wasn't Carl Lewis.
Right.
You can find it on YouTube. Matter of fact, if I want to. I've got a quick warn that's really a surprise to no one, but I don't know if any of you have seen this a second time. This is the first time I saw it a second time. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Oh, Jesus.
Have you guys seen this more than once?
I've seen it twice, but only because I saw it in theaters and then I saw it for the Sins video.
Same.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So my son decided, hey, I'm going to be in charge of movie night and I want Crystal Skull. And I was like, man, I remember that movie being just absolute rotten garbage. But then I looked it up and it's got, like 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, higher than average IMDb score. So I was like, maybe I was too hard on this movie when I first saw it. And I was not hard enough on this movie when I first saw it. This movie is just we've talked about how Spielberg basically, I guess, just doesn't care anymore. Like he's doing whatever he wants to, whenever he wants to. But the fact that he recycles this character for a fourth time in 2008 and doesn't do anything new with it, like it brings back another Karen Allen movie.
Yeah,
brings back Karen Allen. It's a greatest hits of a movie with nothing new to add. The fact that he added the alien thing is hot garbage, man. It does nothing to it except muddle the plot. I'll read you my notes as I went through this movie as I was watching it.
You wrote notes?
I wrote notes because I was like, well, I want to make sure like to jot it down if there was something that I liked. And all I have is what's going on here. This is like a greatest hits album that is self-indulgent, fast, then slow. Then finally, I hate this movie.
Yeah.
I worry a lot about this West Side Story that he's making, specifically because of that motorcycle Jets and Sharks diner scene in Crystal Skull, where it just seemed really ham-handed and caricature-y, and I wonder if even the idea to remake West Side Story didn't come out of directing that scene.
Yeah.
You may be right. It's funny because like the best parts of Raiders of the Lost Ark were the reality of it, right? He's a pulp character. But he's based in reality, and then he gets into these fantastical positions, right? And he can get out of them practically, at least, right, by thinking or stuff like that. The whole nuke fridge thing is the most absurd thing I think I've ever seen in a major motion picture, because it makes absolutely no sense. There's a nuke that goes off like maybe 5 miles away from him. He crawls into the lead fridge, gets thrown down 50 yards down the thing, then immediately comes out to observe the mushroom cloud. I'm sure, but his face doesn't melt off. I don't understand.
I can't remember. I don't remember who did it. I think it's a YouTube video. It might even be Mythbusters for all I know. But they're talking about how, I think first off, the just getting thrown the way he does would have killed him. But
yes,
the radiation from the blast would have gotten him.
That's what I'm saying. Immediately.
Yeah, I mean, you come out. Yeah, you can observe the cloud all you want to, but the radiation is there. You may have not gotten exploded, but that's it's going to get you one way or another. But yeah, it is probably one of the most absurd things that's happened in the last. I don't know. There's not.
I mean. Yeah,
Not to mention
the Crusaders, the actual Last Crusade fantastical bits will happen. I'll buy that dude reaches into Ham Nam Shabam chest and pulls out a heart. That for some reason makes sense to me, but a nuke fridge does not.
Actually, I'm more offended by the multiple gopher reaction shots than I am the fridge itself.
God, that was so bad.
It's like one of the cheesiest fucking. It's like, God, I fucking hate those gophers, man.
Yeah.
When I was watching the movie, that was the moment where I went, Spielberg, what are you doing?
I know, man.
This is not you.
I know.
I saw. I think it might have been Red Letter Media or somebody like that was talking about how, I think they watched the making of this movie, and they were some of the interviews that the cast were giving about this, and Karen Allen said something like, very unironically was saying, when I first met Steven, he was just like this kid. He was like making these movies. He was, excited and everything. Now he's old and he's got his own kids and all that. He didn't say old, but just said now he's much older and he's got his own kids and everything. And there's a sort of the point that they were making was the fact that it just seems like that kid has been sort of punched out of him on some of these movies, and he doesn't have that same sort of, gumption to go into a movie and make it like a kid.
I guess not. I mean, how do you screw up Ready Player One?
Yeah, Ready Player One
the way
was
that he did.
Oh my God. In addition to him not being the best director for that movie, just the fact that, you shouldn't be able to screw it up that badly, but
yeah,
there are people who love it. So what do I know?
The book is perfect, but it's a lot more fun than the movie itself.
Yeah, I agree.
The movie's not concerned about any of the details. It's just literally the pomp is all you want.
Yeah,
and I got no time for that.
I don't even care about the circumstance, just the pomp.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you ever see that movie, Jeremy?
Ready Player One?
Yeah.
I started it 3 times and stopped it inside 30 minutes every single time. I'm done. I can't connect to that.
It's too much. It's just too much. It's like, hey, I've got a lot of money. Let's spend it on references.
Yeah.
Really expensive references.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to do some questions?
Let's do some
Let's do
questions.
some questions.
Question.
I got something to say. I want the truth. I am listening.
Oh, I like this one. I just rewatched Knives Out last night and liked it even more than I did when I saw it in theaters. I agree. That movie gets better every time that you watch it. I thought it was a great update to the, quote, whodunit genre, which I thought had been exhausted by this point. My question is, what is a classic film genre that you would like to see reimagined in a modern context, and who would you hire to direct the movie? I like this question.
That's a good question.
And it's interesting because the guy says, I thought the whodunit had been exhausted before now. And I don't know really what the questioner means by that. But it certainly hasn't been around for a while. Like in the 80s, you had Clue and you had Without a Clue and you had like Young Sherlock Holmes and you had like a lot of these mysteries and Agatha Christie adaptations and things like that. And he's very right that Knives Out really kind of came out of nowhere to reinvigorate this whole genre, and hopefully it'll spawn a few similar things, right?
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, so during the prep and everything, Jeremy said parody movies, and I'll give that to Chris if he wants it. So I'll go ahead and take parody movies. I feel like the parody movie is something that lost its way, and it lost it before the Friedberg Seltzer crew came in and started making the movies. It actually lost its way like somewhere in the 90s, where when you had movies like The Naked Gun and Hot Shots that were good examples of these movies that came out, you then got a lot of imitators from either people who were sort of related to the Zucker brothers or somewhat loosely related. So you had stuff like Fatal Instinct, which was supposed to be a Basic Instinct kind of a parody. It wasn't very good. Spy Hard, which was confused as to whether it wanted to be a James Bond parody or a Die Hard parody. It was hard to really know what it was. Wrongfully Accused. Of course, Leslie Nielsen was in a lot of these. But a lot of these movies came out and they didn't get the idea that there's supposed to be a lot of different kinds of jokes in the movies that made Airplane and Naked Gun and Top Secret and all these movies classics. There are a lot of different kinds of jokes that you can do. And the thing that the Zucker brothers always did with some of these movies is that they would even play on some conventions with like some real movie knowledge, like some real technical movie knowledge. The scene where Robert Stack is looking at himself in the mirror, and then Robert Stack walks out of the mirror, quote unquote. And in Top Secret, where there's this phone in the foreground, and the guy goes over and picks it up, and it really is that big. And they had an eye for these things, and just a knowledge, and just a general. It was apparent that they had studied comedy. They knew that there were different kinds of jokes. There were different things that they could try. Obviously, the Zuckers, Jerry Zucker went on to do like more serious films. And Dave Zucker wasn't really around much, after that.
Did he do Ghost?
Jerry Zucker did Ghost, and he did First Night. And
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Is that the Richard Gere?
Yeah,
Sean Connery?
yeah, Julia Ormond.
Richard Gere is Lancelot.
Yeah. And then it was a whole love triangle thing where, Sean Connery was pissed off that Guinevere was in love with Lancelot, and she claimed that her mind was greater than her heart, so she would go with him anyway. The Zucker, like David Zucker, ended up directing, I think, one of the Scary movies, like Scary Movie 4, maybe one of those. And he did Basketball, which is something that I have a soft spot for. But even he didn't really have, he wasn't contributing much to the genre anymore. And that's why Friedberg and Seltzer came in, and they started making these, basically it's the one joke premise where, it's a bunch of references. It's just a bunch of references over and over again. So yeah, to have somebody to come in and infuse that. And we kind of got that with Walk Hard. The movie wasn't,
Yeah.
The movie was not a hit at all. I think it like tanked. In fact, it was so poorly attended. It has gotten a huge following since, but Walk Hard is about as modern as those type of things get for parody movies. And I would like to see somebody like Jake Kasdan who did that, or somebody else. Adam McKay, to do a parody movie. Although I think McKay now has sort of found his new zone that he wants to be in for a while, and who knows how long that'll be. But I would like to see somebody like that get into the parody movie and give us something that's thought out again, not just here's a good time for a punked reference. Let's have somebody who looks like Ashton Kutcher show up and do a Punk'd reference. And a lot of you out there are old enough that you don't even know what fucking Punk'd is. And that's the point. Like, you don't even know these fucking things that they were making fun of in these movies. So make something that's a little bit more timeless, a little bit more thought into the jokes. And yes, I would love.
Let me piggyback on that with my answer. Is that okay, Barrett?
Yeah, man.
I would like to see a return of the Bing Crosby, Bob Hope road movie. I don't know if you guys have ever seen these.
Yeah.
The plot almost never matters. It's very thin. It's just them getting into hijinks, fish out of water. There's usually a romance. There's usually some songs. But why I'm piggybacking this with yours is that each of the road movies was a light satire or parody of existing movie tropes at the time, like Arabian Night movies or wilderness adventure movies or high seas comedy movies. Each of the road movies set out to sort of ape another movie or type of movie that Hollywood was cranking out at the time. They made them for over 20 years, man. They made 7 of these things. They were going to make another one the year Crosby died in the 70s.
Oh, really?
And because of my mother's love for musicals and specifically Bing Crosby's voice, I was exposed to Holiday Inn and White Christmas, and then of course the road movies growing up. So there's a nostalgic.
You watched The Road?
thing.
Like the Viggo Mortensen, The Road?
No.
God.
The road movies.
God.
Dumbass.
That's dark. When you were like young?
Anyway, I think that you could find 2 actors who play well off each other, like Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling and the Nice Guys, and send them off on a series of fish out of water adventures, and each one could make fun of a current kind of, like, one could make fun of the Fast and Furious movies, and one could make fun of Noah Baumbach movies. I don't know. Anyway,
Francis Ha? More like Francis Na.
Anyway, that is the type of movie that I don't think they're making anymore that I would like to see come back. So there you go.
Well, I'm going to piggyback off of yours.
Oh,
then,
shit.
because a lot
We
of
have a triple piggyback.
Otherwise known as a human
Yeah,
centipede.
that's right. Or is it it's a double piggyback?
Typically, they would work in like a Bing Crosby musical number in those road movies, right?
Yeah,
and usually it's him singing and then Bob Hope kind of like speaking his part,
scatting.
Right?
Yeah, it's basically
scatting. Since La La Land came out, I don't think I've seen any quote imitators that are that classic musical. And I would love to see that come back. I would love for Jamie and Chazelle to come back and do, a couple more of those because it's so expertly done that it brings you back to like a simpler time, basically. And I think this would be a nice time to go back to a simpler time.
Yeah, the modern musicals we get are just film versions of stage shows, right?
They are.
Like
Yesterday was one of them.
Well, and I was even thinking, like, fuck, I can't think of anything.
Oh,
right
well,
now.
like Cats,
Phantom of the Opera, Cats, or you get something, really left field like a Baz Luhrmann film. But that classic musical, that's what I like about La La Land, is it made me think of Singing in the Rain and that era of films, and he obviously has his finger on the pulse of those movies. I'm with you. I would love to see him.
He does, and he takes it. Yeah, he takes it seriously. Like he understands how those worked back in the day. Like the Baz Luhrmann stuff is like, I'm going to make a derivative off of this, and like stuff like Chicago is just like you were saying, very straightforward, film adaptation. So yeah, I think La La Land was a unique situation that could be studied to not replicate, but you get that same feeling. But you have to take that subject matter kind of quote seriously. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we just did a show. We did a podcast right there, buddy.
That's right.
Next week we will be doing the 2 rounds in the second round, the two parts of the bracket, the South and the West, that are still left. So we'll be doing 2 next week.
Man, there's some crazy ass matchups.
Yes.
Coming up.
Yes.
I'm looking at some that they're breaking my brain.
Yeah, no kidding. But we're going to be doing that next week. Keep going to Sincast presented by Cinemasins on Facebook. We're also on Cinemasins Twitter, Music Video Sins Twitter. We're on SoundCloud. We're also on Discord. If you want to get on Discord, you can go to our Reddit page and find the link on the right side, or you can go to the Facebook page and private message me, and I'll give you a link there. But that is going to do it for this week. It's Chris Atkins and Jeremy Scott, Barrett Scher. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Comment on our episodes on our SoundCloud page. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. And be sure to visit cinemasins.com.
The aloe pit, and there's a bunch of bottles. Shit, fucking bottles! God damn it!
That's right. That's where I reckon he's the guy that eats the nuke, right?
I haven't seen that movie in forever. I couldn't tell you.
He's the one that.
So yes, he's the guy who eats the nuke. I have no idea.
Everybody knows what a cock ring is. A cock ring is. A cock ring is. Everybody knows what a cock ring is all through the day. Who wants to know what a cock ring is? A cock ring is. A cock ring is. Who wants to know what a cock ring is? A cock ring is. Hey, did you think Connie Nielsen was doing an Irish accent in that movie?
Not really.
Oh, you didn't? I thought she was doing Irish. I guess she was doing like her native Denmarkian.
Yeah, I think
whatever.
Yeah. I didn't feel that. I thought actually I didn't really consider the different nationalities married to each other thing at all. I didn't even realize that was going on in this thing. I wasn't even paying attention to that part of it, but she sounded Scandinavian. So I was just like, all right, that sounds like something that's probably her native tongue.
So now we have talked to somebody who directed somebody that was in The Devil's Advocate.
Yep.
And like that makes me like turgid.
Yeah, exactly. Indeed.
Is that even a synonym for hard?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. Hey. Anyway, we should
I think it's in the romance bestsellers tool shed for synonyms.
He was turgid.
He was turgid. Yeah. He put his turgid member into her quivering flesh.
Her quivering mass of love pudding.
That's right. The dude in Naked Gun 33 1/3.
He shoved his purple-headed warrior.
I'm back. Na under your skin like a splinter. I'm interesting. The best thing since wrestling. Infesting in your kids' ears and nesting.
You know a lot of Eminem lyrics, right? Like you were saying, you were brushing up on Superman, but like you already know a lot of the lyrics because a lot of those, like I know the song very well, and I know the "Forgot About Dre" chorus, but like I don't really know a whole lot. And I know all of "Lose Yourself." I don't know a whole lot of like Eminem raps.
I know a good chunk. I know way more of Stan than I wish I did because I'm not a big fan of that song. But yeah, I know a good 70% of most of the lyrics, at least anything that was on the radio. But I'm trying to learn more because I want to be like M, especially after we talk about my recommend.